Welcome to Bread and Butter, the show looking behind the scenes of the hospitality business. I'm Wendy Hargreaves. We'll be tackling some big issues today, all brought to you by hospo tech company HungryHungry. Melbourne's hospitality industry is back in the news this week. Premier Dan Andrews sank $290 million into a city recovery fund to resuscitate the near-dead hospo and art scene, with a big focus on more outdoor spaces during this summer's dining season. Mr. Andrews is taking inspiration from New York City's Open Restaurants initiative, transforming streets and footpaths into dining areas and keeping venues afloat during lockdown. We'll cross to New York to find out how outdoor dining is really going in the Big Apple. And from what I'm hearing, it ain't pretty. We'll also ask Melbourne publican Paul Dimattina for his take on the lockdown. The former AFL footballer appears to be smashing it in South Melbourne, with loyal customers swooping on his hearty take-home meals. But Lamaro's is reportedly losing $2,000 a day, even after all the government support. And Paul tells me the push for outdoor dining will set him back even further. Meanwhile, some good news for restaurants, pubs and cafes in regional Victoria. From midnight tonight, they can move freely, and restaurants and pubs and cafes can restart indoor and outdoor trade with capped numbers of customers. Premier Andrews won't speculate on whether he'll change Melbourne's roadmap to include indoor dining or whether he'll relax restrictions early here. Regardless, our country neighbours are celebrating their release from lockdown hell, and we'll cross to one of the state's most successful country bakeries to find out what that looks like. But first, let's look at this week's news in food and drink, brought to you by HungryHungry. A Mornington Peninsula cafe owner has mounted a legal challenge over Victoria's coronavirus curfew, arguing it breaches her right to freedom, liberty and security. AAP reports that Miale filed the suit in Victoria's Supreme Court, and an application to escalate the case to the Court of Appeal will be heard today in Supreme Court. Dozens of Melbourne's top restaurateurs have joined forces to fight Mr. Andrews' lockdown, which prohibits sit-down dining in the city until the entire state's daily average cases of COVID-19 falls under 5. Famously competitive chefs are putting old grudges aside and holding weekly Zoom meetings to coordinate their It's Time campaign, which includes giant pink anti-lockdown posters in the windows of the city's most iconic venues, including Florentino, D'Estasio, Chin Chin, Francois and the Stokehouse. The 46 restaurateurs have also sent an open letter to Mr. Andrews demanding a safe return to indoor and outdoor dining, saying the hospitality industry is well set up for contact tracing and hygiene. The group fears Mr. Andrews' focus on outdoor dining in a city famous for having 4 seasons in a day will be a problem. Members of the group have also questioned the success of New York City's open dining initiative, the linchpin of Premier Andrews' roadmap for Melbourne's restaurants. Indoor dining is banned in New York, just like Melbourne, but the city's footpaths, lanes and some streets have been transformed into open-air bars, cafes and restaurants. Sounds like a party, but hospo connections in New York paint a grim picture. Last night I spoke with Australian restaurateur Rob Marchetti, the ex-Iceberg chef who owns a huge corner restaurant and basement bar in Manhattan called Grand Tivoli. Rob told me he can't offer outdoor dining because there's a fire hydrant outside his corner building. He says more than 1,000 venues have closed permanently in New York City, with more closures expected. A September survey by New York's Restaurant Association predicts more than 2/3 could permanently close by the end of the year. I'm joined now by New York City radio host and food media producer Tom Miale, who's lived and breathed the city's restaurant and bar scene for more than 20 years. Welcome to Bread and Butter, Tom.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks for having me.
Now, so here in Melbourne, our state leader wants to model our reopening of restaurants on what's happening in New York City. Are we on the right path?
Oh, I don't know. It's a tough question. There's a lot of moving pieces to this right now. I think that when initially outdoor dining was opened up here in the city, there was a little bit of a hesitant sort of attitude towards it. A lot of restaurants didn't know whether or not they were going to be able to staff or whether or not they wanted to be able to staff. There are contingency plans that if COVID cases do spike, then all of a sudden the lockdown will have to come back. And I think a lot of places didn't want to have to go out and hire staff knowing that they might not be able to keep them for any time. So I think that people were grateful to be able to get back out there, but it was a band-aid on a giant wound right now that is not it's not really solving the core of the problem.
So how tough is it for restaurant and cafe and bar owners in the city at the moment?
Oh, it's bad. It's very bad. I mean, there are some nice shots of outdoor dining, and it looks very European, where we're going outside and we're having these great little parties. At the core of that is a hospitality industry that is reeling. They margins for the restaurants in New York are just notoriously thin. Being able to just offer outdoor seating is not something that any restaurant can survive on. Even in the coming months, we're talking about opening up indoor dining at 25%. I've spoken with a lot of restaurateurs who say that it's just not worth it for them to have 7 or 8 covers in an evening, which is 25% of their capacity. It's not worth it for them to just open up.
It's not really part of the New York culture to dine outside either. Like, how well has it been received?
Well, it's actually been very nice when you go to a restaurant that has a nice little area set up. The restaurants that are doing it, the restaurants that are able to do it, are doing it well. You do have a frazzled staff. Everybody is running back and forth, and it's a big change. But I think that it is nice now, this time of year, but we are at the very end of our summer, the beginning of autumn. The weather is getting cooler. Restaurants will have to invest in heat lamps, which they normally wouldn't do. I don't know how it's going to continue over the next few months. And quite frankly, I don't know how many diners are ready to go inside and have a meal at this point.
Well, I'm told restaurants and cafes are allowed to open over in New Jersey, but not in Manhattan. Is that what's it like having so many different rules?
Yeah, I think that's the big frustration from everyone. So New York City, we have, our 5 boroughs. There's Brooklyn, Bronx, Queens, Manhattan, and Staten Island. New York City is under our mayor, who makes up certain rules. Not makes up certain rules, I shouldn't say that. There's one set of rules for them, but then if you go just outside of the city limits, there's another set of rules. So all of the different counties on Long Island or New Jersey or the surrounding areas have different sets of regulations. Now, most restaurants are not worried about losing diners to the outer boroughs, but I think the frustration lies in that there is not one set of regulations, and the regulations vary just amazingly. And they change overnight. And it's very hard to plan anything financially when you know that the rules could change like that.
So I've heard of many restaurants in New York City that haven't been able to afford to open with just outdoor dining and takeaway. Would you say that that's more common than not?
I would say that from personal experience, I've spoken with a lot of restaurant owners and bar owners, and they all gave it a go, or the majority of them gave it a go at the beginning. I think that they tried their hardest. Some of them decided that it just wasn't worth it, and some of them decided that they're going to keep riding it out. I think, like I said, I think it's a Band-Aid right now. The outdoor dining is a Band-Aid. So they're looking to keep working as much as they possibly can, hoping that there is going to be some sort of a long-term solution, which quite frankly doesn't look very good.
So you've been to Melbourne before. You've seen how it's set up here in the hospitality industry. What can our local restaurateurs and cafe owners and pub owners learn from the New York experience over the past summer?
Well, first of all, I love Melbourne. I was just there coming up on my 1-year anniversary of leaving Melbourne, and I miss it quite a bit. I don't know. I don't know what there is to learn from this because I feel like we're all still learning as we go. There are different regulations every day. Just today, our mayor said that maybe we will be able to keep the outdoor dining initiative going past October 31st, which was the deadline that he set. And that was received again with varying degrees of anger and joy and hopefulness. People don't really know what to expect moving forward. So I do think that there's a lot of moving pieces here, and I think the one thing to take from it is that it's going to be different for every single restaurateur and every single location.
So thank you so much for your time, Tom. Can you tell us how can we find your radio show and podcast if we want to hear about what's happening in New York?
Sure. I run a website called www.notafoodie.com. It's a little sort of tongue-in-cheek name. And we have a radio show and a podcast. You can find all of that information from www.notafoodie.com. And you can follow us on Instagram at The Not a Foodie Show.
Fantastic. Thank you for your insights from New York, Tom. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Wendy.
That was Tom Miale, one of New York's most respected food media producers and a longtime fan of the city's restaurant scene. Back in Melbourne, restaurants and hotels are hemorrhaging money in rent, wages, utilities and food costs just to stay afloat with takeaway and home delivery. My next guest is Paul Dimattina, one of the city's most respected publicans at Lamaro's Hotel in South Melbourne. Welcome to Bread and Butter, Paul.
Hey, Wendy, how you doing?
Pretty good, thank you. Now, you've heard about New York's outdoor dining scheme. What's your take on Melbourne's push to follow suit?
It's a preposterous idea. I mean, we appreciate the government at least trying to finally give us a little bit of a hand, but the reality is Melbourne, the weather, we're not New York. They've got their temperature's about 8 degrees on average warmer than Melbourne across the year, or this time of the year, not in winter, obviously. They have a lot less days of rainfall. So, and I think I said it the other night, Melbourne, we're close to Antarctica. We're the great southern land. We're the southernmost point on this on the mainland. Then you've got Tasmania and Antarctica. So the 4 seasons in one day, it makes for outdoor dining an impossibility in Melbourne. Yes, outdoor dining in conjunction with indoor. We embrace that, but we do not embrace outdoor dining only. It's just a Band-Aid solution. It doesn't make sense. And there again, it's another decision that's not been done in consultation with anyone from our industry.
Now, you're one of Melbourne's most successful publicans and you're lucky to be in a pretty well-off suburb. So I imagine you're one of the lucky ones in lockdown to have some loyal, rusted-on customers.
Yeah, I mean, we're working around the clock. I've never worked so hard in my life for so little, but you do anything you can to try to keep your business alive. And, we are facing financial Armageddon. Our industry's on its knees and we keep getting kicked and whacked left, right and centre without being listened to, without being assisted where possible. And, the other day, I still can't believe the mentality of some people. The $3 billion handout, it's not a $3 billion handout to our industry. It's for small business. But $1.7 billion of that is in deferred payroll tax. That's just a debt we're accruing down the track. Some of it just doesn't make sense. We've been closed for over 220 days for regular trade now, over 220 days. So this offer, if you're lucky enough to get the grant between 10 and 30,000, if you can attain 30,000, what's that equate to for 220 days closed? Maybe $150 a day in some form of token compensation. It's just too little too late in a lot of ways.
What about the $27 million announced in waived liquor licence fees for 2021? Will that help?
I mean, our liquor licence fee here is about $4,000. Every little bit's going to help. Don't get me wrong. Every little bit will help. But, some of them are just absolutely token gestures. And we want more action taken. We want to be listened to and listened to properly. We are safe. We keep harping on about the fact that how regulated our industry is with the Liquor Licence Act. There's the Food Act, where our reputation's on the line every time we open our doors. Every time we serve a customer, our reputation's on the line. The last thing we want to do in our industry is reopen and have outbreaks. We know we're safe. We will keep our customers safe. And people want to get out. People do. And people who don't want to get out, that's fine. If you're uncomfortable, stay home. We're not asking you to come out. The majority of the public now wants to get out of their house. A lot of the kids want to go back to school. As I said, if you feel unsafe and you feel threatened by the coronavirus, stay home. The choice is yours. Listen to Dan. Stay home for that. But the rest of us, if you want to go out, we should be able to go out. We still have a right to be able to enjoy a community hub, which restaurants, cafes, pubs and bars are. We're a community hub, and the community's crying out at the moment to catch up with each other and to enjoy each other's company again, and all these things that are being deprived of us.
Now, you've been part of a high-powered group of chefs and restaurateurs meeting online each week, which I talked about earlier in the show. So what do you hope to achieve from getting together like that?
We discussed it again. Yes, it's just fantastic that we've all banded together as a team. I think everyone's pushed rivalries aside, past whatever may have happened in the past is done. Everyone's, on the same page, trying to move forward as a united group. There's some amazing mix of brains and great chefs. There's great front of house people, some great mathematicians in there as well. Everyone's got their skill sets, and as I said, it's the first time everyone's really banded together as a team to ensure the survival of our fabulous industry, which, we're one of the cornerstones of the economy here in Victoria. We're the lifeblood. We employ so many people. We want our staff back at work. We want to employ more people, and we feel at the moment we are being completely hindered and not listened to in what we're doing. So it's just been great to have everyone getting together like they have, and some great minds, and the way that everyone's banded together is really heartwarming.
So if you had the ear of the Premier, you basically got to sit down with him. What would you want him to do?
We would like him to listen to the reasons that we believe we can open and reopen safely. As we keep saying, it's time. And he said it himself that, the outbreaks aren't in restaurants, they're not in pubs, they're not in cafes, they're in, certain household situations. So we want to be listened to. As I said, I think, Dan's got ears, he's got to start using them to listen to us. We are crying out for help, we're crying out to be listened to, we're crying out to reopen, and we want to reopen safely, and we know we can reopen safely. And the majority of the public want to get back out again. And I think, I'll say it again, if you don't want to go out, you don't have to. No one's forcing you to do it. And everyone's entitled to an opinion, and we appreciate that. We've just got ours, and we know what we can do to ensure the safety of our customers and the community.
Well, perhaps Premier Andrews has been listening, since yesterday he announced that regional Victoria can be substantially relaxed on their restrictions from midnight tonight. Do you see that as a glimmer of hope for Melbourne restaurateurs?
Absolutely. I think, finally, absolutely, absolute glimmer of hope. And we've just got to stop this blanket policy for everybody. I mean, friends of ours down in Sorrento, that there's no cases down the Mornington Peninsula, especially there. They should be allowed to open. They should be allowed to trade, and they can trade, I believe. But of course, we're told there's this one blanket policy that one size fits all. It's just not right. It needs to be a little bit more perspective and balance and some common sense in place, which we're just not getting at the moment. So it is quite disappointing. And, you look at other cities like New York, and we hear how their outdoors scenes really, it's not as successful as people think it is. We just really want to be heard. We want to be listened to. We want to be understood. And we know that we're banding together. I mean, our stance, and we're not shying away from it, is that outdoor is not an option. We are not going to open outdoor only. It has to be in conjunction with indoor. Whether it's limited indoor to start, that's fine, but just let us get our venues reopened, and we promise we can do it safely. And we've all got COVID plans, and don't forget the cost of running your business is going to go up exponentially when we do reopen anyway, by having extra staffing just to make sure that we are cleaning like we were when we opened for the 6 or 7 weeks at the start of June. And we know that there was no outbreaks then. People went out, they were comfortable going out. And as I said, if you don't feel comfortable, stay home. Now,
you were a gun AFL player before moving into pubs, for the few people out there that might not realise that. Any lessons from the sporting world that can help you deal with this current crisis?
Absolutely. The one thing with myself, obviously, I was a pretty hard-working, and I still am a hard-working person, and I was always part of a team, and I was never a Brownlow medalist or a best and fairest winner, and that's for absolute stars, but I was just a vital cog in a team, and that's what the group of us that are banded together now, we are a team. We're trying to assist every other venue as well. We believe that you've got the most probably powerful voices there in the hospitality industry, and we want to support and assist all of the smaller venues as well. This is not just a crusade for the bigger venues, this is a crusade for our industry as a whole. We've got a foot in the door with Dimattina coffee, and to see how many of our cafes and the little smaller joints are suffering, it's really heartbreaking, and our heart goes out to them as well. So we're trying to do this for the good of all of our industry, not just to, we're not a self-serving group just looking after the big end of town. We're trying to represent our industry as a whole, and it's been great. The Restaurant Caterers has jumped on board, and they've been the Restaurant Caterers Association with Wes Lambert and Angela Dawson here in Victoria, who's been great, and Anthony Anomikos have really helped out. They commissioned a survey last week, which more and more people are starting to fill in the survey, and the staggering thing is that looks like at least 55 to 60% of venues will never reopen again. That's just not healthy for what makes Victoria a great state, and what we, especially Melbourne, we were internationally renowned for our sports, our cultural scene, our dining scene, and our arts, and it's just, that's being diminished, and hopefully we can make a comeback. At the moment, you just don't want to drive down the street and see every second shop with a police sign. It's just not a great look, and that's what's happening with our once great city. And I say once great city, we can become great again, and we need to become great, and we want to become great, but we need political leaders who want to assist us in becoming great and not try to hinder the greater cause.
Well, on that note, Paul, thank you so much for your time and best of luck. You have one of Melbourne's best chefs in Jeff Lindsay pumping out some great meals at Lamaro's Hotel. So encourage people to get along and support a great pub. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Wendy. And obviously, we don't want people just to support us here at Lamaro's. Yes, myself and the Chris Lucas of this world and a few of us have had some decent press lately, but support all your local cafes, your local pubs, your local restaurants. Everyone's crying out for help. It'd be good if everyone can keep obviously sharing the love and get out there and really support your local venues. Everyone needs the community support at the moment. I'm doing my best. I live in Elwood to ensure that I'm shopping at every place I can on Ormond Road and spending my money where I can. Not that we have much of it left, but spending it with the community and making sure that everyone can survive and come out of this better on the other side.
Great tips. Thank you so much for your time, Paul.
Thanks, Wendy.
That was Paul Dimattina, publican at Lamaro's Hotel in South Melbourne. Yesterday, Premier Dan Andrews delivered some good news for regional Victoria. From midnight tonight, curfews and restrictions will be lifted across most businesses and residents will be free to move. This is great news for John Reid, the co-owner of RedBeard Bakery in Trentham, a beautiful hamlet in Victoria's Central Highlands. Welcome to the Bread and Butter Show, John. How are you going?
G'day there, Wendy. How are you?
Really well. So are you celebrating up there after yesterday's unexpected news from the Premier?
Absolutely delighted, I have to say. We're so proud of I guess our whole community for pulling this off and essentially having zero cases for a long time. And I think we're proud of Melbourne for staying out of regional Victoria. Sorry, Melbourne people. But essentially we're over the moon that we're now going to be able to reopen. It's not quite COVID normal yet, but gee whizzes, it's going to be great. We're of course in Central Victoria, perfectly set up for a beautiful spring of outdoor dining, and there's so many discussions here out my little hamlet of Trentham in Central Victoria. We're talking about closing the main street on the weekends, and outdoor dining, going out, spilling out onto the road and stuff. I know Dalesford, which is very close to us, and we're part of Hepburn-shire, they're also talking about doing the same thing. So, sense of, enormous relief. I mean, at the same time, obviously I can hear you, Paul. It's appalling. I totally get it. I'm with you. I really can't wait for Melbourne people to be able to get out into the country and visit us, of course, but also just do more around Melbourne. I'm not in the It's Time camp, I'm afraid, though. I'm with Dan and I'm in Stay the Course camp, because that's what we've done in regional Victoria and we pulled it off by the look of it. And, it's obviously fingers crossed that we can still keep, numbers down, and we'll have to keep wearing masks and all that stuff as well, of course, and social distancing. But pretty much regional Victorians can now travel anywhere in the state apart from Metro Melbourne, which is, fabulous. I'm
so you
planning to take the kids on a holiday.
Well, just to wind back a little bit, John, you're saying that you don't agree with the It's Time campaign.
Not at all. Look,
But you're sitting up there able to trade indoor and outdoor without any restrictions. So how are you able to say that?
It's a little bit rich, and as I said, my heart goes out to Paul. But the other side of the coin down there too is what Paul was talking about at the end there, which is that people are supporting local. People are getting out in Elwood and St Kilda and supporting their local joints, and some people who've been able to cater and pivot, bloody pivoting. Being able to pivot and actually provide for locals in a meaningful way are doing okay, in the hospitality trade. So, and obviously bars and pubs are in real trouble, and it's been harder for them. But listening to Ben Shuri talking about it this morning on Danny's show, just extraordinary. How some people have turned this horrible lockdown into an opportunity to really reinforce this idea of local food for local people.
So how hard has it been without all of your rusted-on fans down here in Melbourne who used to drive up the Calder Freeway every weekend for a taste of your bread? How hard has it been without them?
We're missing you, Wendy. We're really missing you. It's been the place has been absolutely a ghost town up here in Trentham. People have been totally doing the right thing, and I appreciate that. I also have to say that we personally here, and I know this doesn't apply to all businesses, but we are so grateful for ScoMo for because that's let us keep on employing our staff and get them through to this point where we can now hopefully start to trade into the black again and actually employ them properly again, and also to Dan Andrews and the Victorian government for all those small business grants, which have allowed us to do things like we've just we've used some of that 10 grand we got to actually build a new pastry room. So we've got a sourdough pastry room that we built out the back with that money, brand new sheeter, for laminating, and we're going to have within the next couple of months we're going to launch a sourdough pastry range, and we haven't done those for 10 years or so, but we've been able to rejig the whole bakery now and offer those.
That's
fabulous.
I'm sorry to cut you off there, John. You've got me salivating. I'm really excited to hear that you've got new stuff happening, and I really appreciate your time. We've run out of time, unfortunately. Now, thank you though, John. That was John Reid, the co-owner of Trentham's RedBeard Bakery, producing amazing sourdough in one of Australia's oldest Scotch ovens up in Trentham. You've been watching Bread and Butter, brought to you by HungryHungry. I'm Wendy Hargreaves, and I'll be back next week with more news from behind the scenes of the food and drink business. Until then, eat well and stay safe.
Stream us live on the Ticker app, Apple TV, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and tickertv.com.au. Ticker, streaming news now.